Welcome to Negotiation Made Simple, where we help you master the art of negotiation and win the next deal. I'm your host, John Lowry. On this episode, we are going to look back on the story of Indiana football coach Curt Cignetti. His story is full of lessons for those of us that are negotiating every single day, for those of us that may find ourselves in a little bit of a funk, where things are a little bit of a challenge right now. We feel like we may be losing just a bit. This is the moment where Coach Cignetti speaks to us and gives us a path and a formula to where we can turn our challenges, we can turn our losses into tremendous success and a legacy of winning like he has done throughout his football coaching career. So I'm excited about thinking about Coach Cignetti, thinking about this incredible story that was capped off this week with Indiana University winning the national championship in football. And this story, whether you like football or not, this story has some lessons that are very powerful for those of us that are trying to put deals together and trying to solve problems. Let's jump into this episode as we think about lessons from Coach Curt Cignetti. Congratulations to the Indiana University football team for their national championship that they won earlier this week. What an amazing story of a team that historically has struggled and this week reached the mountaintop under the leadership of Coach Curt Cignetti. Curt Cignetti's story is a story that I think has some lessons for all of us, especially those of us as negotiators that find ourselves in a moment where things are really difficult. Deals are hard to come by. The problems that we're trying to negotiate through are really difficult to get through. And if we're not careful, we can kind of find ourselves in a place where we lose our edge, we lose our confidence. We feel like we're losing the fight. And here is where I think this story of Indiana University football comes in. This is where Curt Cignetti has some lessons for us that I think can be really, really valuable. So let's start with his story. For those of you that don't know the details of this story, let me just kind of walk through it for you really quickly. Number one, ironically, Indiana University wasn't the first Indiana University that Coach Cignetti coached at. He actually started his career at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. It's a Division II program. It has nothing to do with the other Indiana University that he coaches now. But here's where he did his first turnaround. Took a losing program, left it a winning program. And as a result of that, people took note of what he did. And then he went from there to Elon University, which was an FCS program. It had a long string of losing seasons. It was a struggling program as well. And in Cignetti's first season, Elon earned an NCAA playoff berth. Again, he did it. He turned it around, and he did it in rapid time. And then folks took note of that. And then he got the opportunity to go to James Madison University. He led JMU to a 14-2 record and led them to the FCS national championship game in his first season. Another remarkable turnaround. He also kind of led them through a major transition where they went from the FCS to the FBS level. And then what's fascinating and what has been missed in this whole story is that James Madison University also played in the college football playoff this year. They lost to the Oregon Ducks in the first round of the playoffs. And so Curt Cignetti, he was responsible not for one, but actually for two schools making it to the college football playoffs this year because of what he did at not only JMU, but then also Indiana University. And so he gets hired away from JMU. Indiana University goes out and hires him. He goes to a program that, if you look at all of the FBS programs, the largest, most successful Division I programs in the country, here he goes to Indiana University, which is ranked 125th out of 136 teams historically. This is a losing program. This is a program that has struggled to find any footing. And so as a result of that, Indiana University, because of all their basketball success under Bobby Knight, it became known as a basketball school. And it certainly wasn't a football school until Curt Cignetti showed up. So Indiana was 3-9 the season prior to him showing up. And in his first season, in classic Cignetti fashion, he turns it around. They go 11-2, and they make a college football playoff appearance. An unbelievable turnaround. And then just this week, in his second season, here you have Indiana University, when no one bet on them, no one believed it, no one gave them any credit at all. They win the national championship. And Cignetti becomes back-to-back Coach of the Year in college football. This story is an amazing story. And yet Cignetti, if you look at his track record, it is really interesting. He has never had a losing season as a head coach, even though time and again he takes over traditionally struggling programs that haven't experienced hardly any success at all. And what's amazing about what he's done is he's done it at every level. He's done it at D2. He did it at the FCS level. Then he did it at the FBS level. And now he's done it with a Power 4 school at the highest level of college football. And so this is a story that you have to look at. You got to take note of, because it's a story of someone who, regardless of the environment, regardless of the history, regardless of the success, he's been able to walk in there and to turn that program into a winning program. And in that, there are some real lessons for us, especially those of us who are doing business, those of us that are negotiating, those of us that are solving problems. One of the things that we have to do in our lives as professionals is we have to figure out how we too find success in difficult environments and in challenging circumstances. And that's the lesson that Curt Cignetti, I think, teaches us. And so this episode, it's for all negotiators. But I specifically today want to talk to those negotiators who I mentioned at the top. Those who feel like they are losing. Those who are right now having to work in very challenging circumstances or in a difficult environment where success is elusive. It's really hard to achieve. This may be some salespeople out there who they're being undercut by their competition. And so it's really hard to protect their margin when you got the competition coming in and undercutting you. And yet the expectation is that you're going to grow margins for your product. It's a really environment to be successful in. Or it could be insurance claims people that are operating in very bad venues where there has been a lot of big verdicts. And as a result of that, attorneys on the other side are very bullish. And it's hard to get great deals. It's hard to get cases settled for a reasonable amount in that kind of situation. Or it could be business people who have experienced some sort of market change. And so what you've been doing in the past is no longer working. And you're having to negotiate kind of a new future, and yet you're kind of struggling to find your traction in this new market and new world. Or maybe it's small business owners who constantly feel at a huge disadvantage as they compete with larger companies, bigger brands, more well-known brands. They compete with organizations that have far more resources than they do, yet they're trying to crack into this market. They're trying to make their business go, and yet they're doing it, and it is an uphill climb. And so if you find yourself in that seat, this episode is for you. I know I have been there, and in some cases right now, I find myself there today. In some of the areas where I negotiate and I coach people who negotiate, this is the environment that we're operating in. And so what is it that Coach Cignetti can teach us? What is it that he can do to inspire us to figure out how to take this kind of losing dynamic and turn it into a winning dynamic? All right, so I think there are 5 lessons that are key to us today. Number 1, losing isn't permanent. Losing is simply adversity waiting to be overcome. So think about that for just a second. Some of these environments that Curt Cignetti walked into, losing felt permanent. Losing felt like it was the only option. For some of these teams, they had done nothing but lose, or it certainly had been a long, long time since they had experienced any success. But he walked in and took a totally different approach, a totally different attitude, and said, no, we don't have to accept losing. We just have some adversity that we've got to figure out how we overcome. And so my question to you today, as we think about this first lesson, is how long will losing be acceptable to you? Losing's kind of miserable. I've been there. I've had my share of losses, and it's no fun. But one of the things that we've got to do is we've got to figure out how long are we going to tolerate that. And if your answer is kind of like mine, I don't want to tolerate that very long, then that sends us on a journey. That sparks our curiosity for how is it that we're going to get out of this cycle? How is it that we're going to get out of this rut that we're in? And how are we going to get on to the business of winning? Curt Cignetti, he said it this week, right after he won the national championship. When he was doing one of his interviews, he says, even here at Indiana, I just want everyone to know it is possible. And so regardless of where you are today, regardless of what challenges or what mountains you have to climb, I want you to hear this loud and clear. It is possible for you to find success and for you to win. If you don't think it's possible, or you don't have the energy to try to do that, or you don't have a vision of a way in which you can be successful, this is going to sound harsh, but I think it's true. You probably need to find a new environment. You probably need to find something else to do. Because the reality is that if you have simply accepted losing, and if you find yourself comfortable, it's going to be really difficult to do all that you will need to do to bring the changes that you'll need to bring about in order to begin to experience winning. And so think about it for a second. How many coaches do you think Indiana University has pursued over the years? And they've said, no, I can't win in Indiana. Indiana doesn't have enough resources. Indiana doesn't have enough people to show up to the games. Indiana doesn't have a good reputation. Indiana's in a really hard conference. There's no way I can be successful in Indiana. Except Curt Cignetti had a different thought to that. He didn't let all those limitations define him or define the opportunity. Instead, he walked in and said, no, it is possible. We can win here. Why not right here at Indiana? And so that's the first step, is we've got to look at the situation we're in, and we've got to recognize that, yes, it's challenging. Yes, it's difficult. We got a lot working against us, but it is possible. It is possible that we can bring about some change, that we can substantively do what we need to do to where we can change the dynamic and we can reestablish some hope that we can win. See, I think for many people, the hope of success, it isn't lost. It certainly isn't lost forever, but it's just faded. It's just harder to see. And because it becomes harder to see, we're less motivated to go after it. And so the Cignetti story, what I love about it is it brings back into focus this idea that winning is possible. And with that, I hope you feel it's time to bring that winning vision back into focus. Now, you can win as a negotiator in any environment and under any circumstance if you just have 2 things. Number 1, like Cignetti would tell us, you got to have a belief. And that's what he did. That was probably the most amazing leadership thing that he did for Indiana University, was he instilled a belief. He made those people believe in themselves more than they ever wanted to. He made them believe that they could win, that they could find themselves on top. Belief will always come first. It always is required before the outcome, the winning, manifests itself. And sometimes that belief is hard. And so sometimes what that belief looks like is, I love this concept. I think it's so critical for negotiators. It requires an irrational confidence, a confidence that doesn't make any sense when you just look at things. And it may be difficult for others to accept the belief because it's irrational. But Cignetti walked in and taught us a huge lesson about what can happen when you have irrational confidence, when you have a belief that you can win. And then the next thing you need, and this is certainly true for Cignetti as well, is you need skill. He needed players. He needed guys that could compete at the level that they needed to compete at. And the same is true for us as negotiators. We've got to get our skills to a place to where we are negotiating in a way that is sharp, in a way that is shrewd, in a way that is strategic. We can't be sloppy if we're working uphill, if we've got things working against us. Being sloppy or not being refined in our negotiation skills and behaviors is not going to work. And so in addition to the belief, we also need the skill. And so one of my questions to you is, okay, do you have the belief, but then do you have the skill? And if you don't have the skill, I hope you'll reach out because we can help you with that. We can help you develop the skills that you need to where you can turn your belief into reality, but it's also going to require skill. And so losing, if we take a very different perspective on it, it's simply adversity that we need to overcome. I love what Tony Bennett said, another national championship coach at the University of Virginia. He said, if you learn to use adversity right, it will buy you a ticket to a place you couldn't have gone any other way. And so this adversity that's in front of us, while many see it as the thing that's holding us back from success, others see it as the opportunity to get better. And through that process, we will find success. So lesson number one, losing isn't permanent. It is simply adversity waiting to be overcome. All right, lesson number two. I'm a soccer guy. I grew up playing soccer. I played soccer in college. And there's a little saying that comes out of the soccer world. Maybe you've heard this chant or not. I hear it at Nashville SC games. I hear it at different sort of kind of soccer venues. And this little chant that says, I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. That chant right there actually has a lesson in that for us, and a lesson taught to us by Coach Cignetti. And so it's this whole idea that I believe that I will win. It's a massive mindset shift. And it goes back to this idea that we've got to believe that we are capable of winning, even though we may not be able to see the path that leads us to victory. And so when Coach Cignetti first showed up at Indiana, he just started asking the question to people, why not right here in Indiana? Why can't Indiana be a football school? Why can't Indiana win national championships? And there were probably people that had lots of answers, but he didn't want to hear it. What he wanted to do was he wanted to change the mindset. He wanted to set some expectations that would then drive behavior. And so he started asking those really good questions of why not Indiana? Why not right here? And so for those of us that are in a real struggle right now, if we go into a negotiation and we expect to lose, or we expect not to get a good deal, or we expect to have to give a lot in order to make the deal happen, the rules of self-fulfilling prophecy will tell us that's probably what's going to happen. And so in negotiation, your confidence, your self-talk, your ambitious expectations, those deeply impact the outcomes that you are capable of delivering. And so we've got to ask some different questions that help change our mindset. Questions such as, what does winning look like? And what do I need to do to win? What would a highly confident negotiator do in this moment? Or how would they go about putting this deal together? What story am I telling myself about this negotiation? And is it helping me or is it holding me back? And so we got to think about the stories that we're telling. I love this one. What pressures might the other side be under that maybe I'm not seeing or I'm not giving enough credit toward? Because the realities is, just like we have fears and uncertainties and this thought that we might lose creeps into our mind, that happens to the other side as well. And so we want to be thinking about, how is the other side under pressure? And then lastly, what deal am I engineering? And what is the next step towards that deal? And so to break this down very simply, to be thinking about that ultimate goal that you're trying to achieve in the negotiation, and then thinking about, what is the next step that I need to achieve? Coach Cignetti talked a whole lot about process. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. But for him, when he showed up, it was step by step in terms of what he needed to do to begin building the program in such a way that it could be a championship program. And so, in order to do this, in order to create that belief within that we can win, I want to go back to a previous episode. If you haven't listened to this episode, I want you to go listen to a recent episode I did with Nick Wignall, who's a psychologist. And Nick talked about how internally we take anxiety and we turn it into agency. We turn it into freedom in terms of being able to pursue the strategies that we need to pursue. And if you remember, he gave us that AVA method. The A being acknowledge the fears, acknowledge the uncertainties, acknowledge all of the concerns and the what ifs that are going through my mind. It's important to acknowledge those. And then to validate those, to understand this is an important deal for the company. And it's okay that I'm nervous, or it's okay that I fear losing this deal or losing this customer. Those are appropriate emotional reactions. But then the last thing he says is, we've got to act. But not act on our anxieties, act on what we need to do strategically in order to pursue the win. And so instead of acting on the anxieties, we act despite our anxieties. And it's amazing that if we'll just acknowledge them, if we'll just validate them, then it's easy to set them aside and to do what we need to do. There had to have been moments where Curt Cignetti had doubts. Can I really do this? Can I really take Indiana University to the national championship in 2 years? There had to have been moments where there were doubts, but he didn't let his doubts define him. Instead, he acknowledged them, he pushed them aside, and he went about doing what he needed to do to make that happen, and he was successful. Another powerful lesson. I believe that I will win. That's got to be a soundtrack that is just going through our head again and again and again. All right, lesson number 3. We got to know how to stack the deck. All right, this is a lesson that will come in a future episode that I've already recorded. And I'm really excited about this episode that's coming. Simon Lithgow, the founder and one of the producers of American Idol, is going to be on the podcast soon. And in this episode, you're going to hear Simon talk about stacking the deck. And it's exactly what Cignetti did in terms of bringing about success. So he couldn't just walk in and say, okay, we're going to win. Let's just do what we need to do and wait for the next game and it's going to happen. No. He had to do a lot of work before he ever got to that first game. That's where the transformation had to take place. The on-the-field transformation was a byproduct of the transformation that occurred before he ever got there. And so here's how he stacked the deck. Number 1, he convinced administration and donors to invest in Indiana football. And the only way that he could convince them to invest is to get them to believe that Indiana could be a football powerhouse. He got them to believe, and then he got them to invest. And there he solved for not only the mindset, but also the resources. He took those resources and he went out and hired a great coaching staff, hired coordinators that he knew and trusted. And then he hit the transfer portal. He went and got a bunch of experienced players who fit the system. Now, it's really important to recognize he didn't get any 5-star recruits, but he got guys that fit his system. Same thing as we negotiate. We've got to think about how we stack the deck. What is it that we need to do so that when we show up to negotiate the deal, we've got leverage? And once Cignetti, once he had the administration, once he had the donors, once he had the resources, now he had leverage to compete for talent with the other top football programs in the country. And he was able to attract some of that talent, put that talent into a system, and he turned it into a national championship. Great negotiators, when they're negotiating, it starts with integrating assets, strengthening your position, looking for your leverage, building on the things that will compel the other side to want to do business with you or want to put a deal together with you. And so the thing that stacking the deck does is it does give us power at the table, but it removes uncertainty. Well, how am I going to get this deal done if I don't have this? Well, go get this, and the deal will become easier. And when we remove uncertainty, we elevate our confidence. And when we elevate our confidence, we get to go operate with certainty. And when we're operating with certainty, we become much more influential and have the ability to put deals together. Curt Cignetti, even though he maybe had to act as if at times, especially early, there was just no doubt as to where Indiana football was headed, to where he was going to take them. There was just no doubt in his mind. And that certainty, that became very influential as others began to buy into that as well. And so we want to stack the deck, and we stack the deck so that we can have more certainty in terms of us driving the deal. And through that certainty, we will be more influential and more persuasive in putting that deal together. All right, lesson number 4, master the process. You have heard me talk in multiple episodes about the importance of process. And yet here's Cignetti. He affirms this lesson that in order to win, we've got to master the process. So whenever Cignetti was asked how, which I've heard him now ask countless times by reporters, how did you do this? He always points to 2 things. Number 1, he'll point to the team and the people, and then he'll point to the process. Discipline, focus, clarity, work, standards. These are the traits. These are these process-oriented types of things that move people from losing to winning. And so those were the things that Cignetti brought to the table. Those were the things that he had people dial in on and think about day to day as they were going about building a national championship program. And so one of the things that great coaches know, but great negotiators also know, is that process delivers outcomes far more than substance. So think about it for just a second. Cignetti had no 5-star recruits, not one. And yet his last 4 wins came against Ohio State, Alabama, Oregon, and Miami. Teams that had a whole host of 5-star recruits. And what Cignetti teaches us, and it's true in negotiation, especially in dynamics where we don't have the power or we're at a disadvantage of some type, that despite that, one of the things that we've got to keep in mind is that belief, culture, and discipline, if we execute on those really well, that is a winning formula that can win every single time. There's lots of businesses that are crazy successful. Their product may not be the absolute best product, but they're really good at taking care of people, their customers. They're really good at marketing and telling their story. And as a result of some of those things, their product is highly successful, even though someone may be able to demonstrate that there's another competing product that's better. It's not all about the substance. It's also about the people and the process. And so lesson number 4, we've got to master the process. Okay, let's wrap this up with lesson number 5. So my good friend Don Miller, he did a video on Curt Cignetti and pulled out some leadership lessons. It is outstanding. I highly recommend it if you can watch it. And one of the points that Don made that I thought was brilliant, that I hadn't thought of before, but I think is appropriate here for lesson number 5, is this idea that we shouldn't be surprised by success. Curt Cignetti, just watching him after he won the national championship, just kind of watching some of the interviews afterwards, he kind of had this kind of odd but interesting reaction to it all. He wasn't surprised. It was kind of like, he just shrugged his shoulders and was kind of like, I told you this is what was going to happen. And everyone else in the world is surprised, but he wasn't surprised because he had such confidence in his system. And I think that's true for us as well. If we're really strategic, we put a system in place, we believe that we can win, we stack the deck, we do all these things that we've talked about, then at the end of the day, when we find success, when we generate a great outcome, we shouldn't be surprised because we did all of the things that are necessary to do in order to make that positive outcome a reality. So I was talking to a client the other day. This was a client that I had done some negotiation training for about 6-8 months ago. He was telling me about all the success that his team had generated as a result of the training. But really, I give the credit to the team. This was an awesome group of people who just ate up everything and were hungry and ready to go put it to work. And they did. And as a result of that, they generated about $1 million to the bottom line of this company. This was newfound revenue. They were really excited about it, and I was extremely happy for them. But one of the things that surprised me in this conversation is that my client wasn't surprised at all. And quite honestly, he shouldn't be surprised. What he did was outstanding leadership, as Donald Miller was talking about in his video, where he describes some lessons from Curt Cignetti for leaders. And the idea is that if you put together a system, if you make people believe that they can win, if you give them the skills to be successful, if you have really good people that want to take the next step and want to go to the next level, and are willing to work together and push each other to do so, and you give them the proper guidance and make the right investments in them, and then let them go execute, then at the end of the day, success should not be a surprise. It wasn't for Curt Cignetti, and it wasn't for my client. And the same is true for you and me. If we're disciplined to go do the things that we've talked about here, to take these lessons to heart and to put them into practice, then at the end of that road, it may not be a straight line. There may be a few ups and downs, maybe a few curves in that road. But at the end of it, there will be a level of success that you can be proud of and that will advance your business, your career, whatever it is that you're looking to advance. And so, real quick, as we wrap up, the 5 lessons. Losing isn't permanent. It is simply adversity waiting to be overcome. I believe that I will win. Lesson number 2. Lesson number 3, we got to stack the deck. Lesson number 4, master the process. And lesson number 5, when you do all these things, don't be surprised by your success that awaits you. Well, I could probably go on and on in terms of lessons from Curt Cignetti, and I'm really excited about learning more about his story because I think there are more lessons in there that are valuable to us. But these 5 right here, I think, are very, very significant. I love this idea of believing that we can win and just what that mindset can do for us. Just that confidence and the certainty that we talked about that creates in terms of walking in and not walking in expecting to lose and expecting to be a victim, but walking in with a sense of control, with a sense of driving and engineering a deal that will be a favorable deal for us. Just that mindset lesson right there can be really, really powerful in terms of us taking a difficult dynamic and turning it into success, which is what you many times have to do as a very sophisticated negotiator. So congratulations, Curt Cignetti. Congratulations, Indiana University, on all of your success this year in the national championship, but also thank you. Thank you for the lessons that you've taught me and all of us as we've learned from you how we turn something that is losing into something that is winning. And that's something that all of us have an opportunity to do in our negotiation lives. I want to invite you to Nashville, Tennessee, May 5th and 6th, 2026, for the Negotiation Made Simple live workshop. This is a 2-day workshop that I do in person here in Nashville with a small group of leaders from around the country. We cap the enrollment to keep it very small because this is a very interactive course where I will give you a bunch of tools, a bunch of different strategic ideas that you can use to become a more effective and higher performing negotiator. People have come to this course and they've learned things, they've taken them back, they've enhanced their success substantially, and I'm honored that we get the opportunity to do it again coming up in May. So I hope that you will come be a part of us. We've got some seats left, May 5th and 6th, Spark, downtown Nashville, Tennessee. To learn more, visit lowrygroup.net. Look for the icons for the Negotiation Made Simple live workshop. Come join us. We're going to have a great 2 days. I hope to see you there.